But hey, keep paying attention to, I don't know, some National Institute of Health grant that went to a medical research that you don't understand and you think is silly and stupid, and therefore you should have a say in having those grants removed. Okay?
The ones that are funding journalism, because then the journalism becomes captured by that money. That is not the scandal they think they found. They think they discovered that USAID is the one funding Politico. That's wrong. But the funniest thing is, wait until they find out who funds Elon Musk. Elon Musk's main funder is the federal government.
Yeah, for everything. Every single industry that Elon Musk is involved in, okay? Every single industry that Elon Musk is involved in is funded and subsidized by the federal government. Tesla was kept afloat for years with the credit, the green credit swap scheme that the government created. It was subsidized by a lot of the renewable energy subsidies that existed for electric vehicles. SpaceX would not exist without NASA or funding. It's another instance of the private-public partnership that exists. Elon Musk has been bailed out a million times over. Okay, as far as Starlink, that's another aspect of U.S. aid. Okay, U.S. aid directly funds Starlink. The Defense Department directly funds Starlink. How the fuck does Starlink reach the hands of Ukrainians? That's it. And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating that people simply don't want to recognize that at all. So that's one of the other annoying parts about this, is that like Elon is supposedly this butcher that is like making the government more efficient. Meanwhile, he's directly getting funded by the federal government and also being investigated by the federal government at the same time.
So if being funded by the federal government makes Politico corrupt when they're not actually funded by the federal government, what do they think of Elon Musk being funded by the federal government? And whatever he's getting now from the feds, he's going to be getting many times more than that over the coming years because of suckers like this guy.
Jesus Christ, that got loud. Yeah. The U.S. government gave the New York Times tens of millions of dollars over just the past 5 years, despite paying relatively little money to the New York Times. In the years preceding 2021, for instance, in August 2024, the U.S. government awarded $4.1 million to the New York Times. The bulk of these funds came from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, followed by the National Science Foundation. The query the original poster ran is not limited to the recipient being the New York Times, nor is it limited to the past 5 years. It's actually New York. He key searched New York. Okay? And then claimed it was the New York Times. What a spectacular moment in history. We laugh about how stupid these people are. Okay. You fell for an internet hoax and now you're angry over it. Explain why Chelsea Clinton received $83 million from U.S. aid. Chelsea Clinton did not receive any money from U.S. aid. The thing is, it doesn't matter. It literally does not matter. Okay. You can actively lie, deliberately lie, and it does not matter as long as it suits your ideological purpose. You can just lie and lie and lie, and not a single person will go, hey, I keep getting duped by this person, because nobody cares about the truth. And if nobody cares about the truth, nobody cares when they're getting duped. As long as it serves their purpose, as long as it serves their ideological purpose of humiliating their interlocutors, their ideological opponents, owning the libs, if you will. Okay? That's it. That's where we're at now. That is where we are at now. Nothing else. Any chance the CIA will do this, do its first good deed ever by exposing Musk for the fraud he is in retaliation? I don't think so, but we'll see. Probably not. I'm not holding my breath on that one. Yeah, there was a tweet that was claiming that AOC is worth $30 million. It's not the case at all. And as a public servant, her, salary and her earnings are out there for people to figure out on their own if they choose to do so. And no, they don't have that. She doesn't have smoke like that. Okay. She doesn't have motion like that. Y'all are ridiculous. Because of the U.S. funding freeze, the entire global ecosystem of China nonprofits is facing an extinction event. I'm not exaggerating for clicks. This is literally what's happening. In many cases, these orgs provide our last window into what is actually happening in China. They do the painstaking, risky work of tracking Chinese censorship, tallying local protests, uncovering rights violations, and documenting the Uyghur genocide. The research and other work done by these nonprofits is invaluable. It largely isn't replicated by think tanks, universities, private firms, or journalists. If it disappears, nothing will replace it, and Beijing's work to crush it will be complete. The U.S. spending freeze has revealed how dependent these organizations are on a single government for their survival, and by extension, how fragile our sources of information of China really are. She doesn't take money from lobbyists, so she ain't got too much since she does it legit, not a piece of shit like the rest of them. Amen, brother. Yeah. You're totally making things up. I'm not even worth $1 million, nor even $500K. I don't even own a house. I'm one of the lowest net worth members of Congress, trade no stock, and take no outside income. My filings are public. I loathe corruption, and your lying is disgusting. It doesn't matter, though. Okay? Look at this. Breaking. Trump called for an investigation to find out who in the government has been getting kickbacks from USAID. For instance, AOC has been in Congress for 6 years. She makes $174,000 a year. She's worth $30 million. The only way that happens is kickbacks. Wife and mom, politically conservative, MAGA Trump 2024, now more than ever, hashtag America First, hashtag MAGA. Just a lie. 113,000 likes, 16 million views on this. You could just make up anything about anyone nowadays, and people should be like, all right, I believe it. Does this suit my agenda? Does this make me feel like I have a sense of community if I go along with it? Is this destroying my ideological opponents that I have been positioned and primed into hating? Then I'm on board. I don't care. No one is going to fucking look into it. Okay? As a matter of fact, it's bad to look into it. Do not look into it. That's the attitude that people have here. Okay? That is the process now. That is the modus operandi. It's gotten so much worse because of Twitter. I cannot state this enough. It is so much worse. These things used to be relegated to email chains that your grandparents were sending to one another. And now it's everywhere. It's completely escaped containment. The U.S. must immediately grant emergency waivers to China-focused nonprofits. The U.S. is not able to do this. Governments around the world that value democracy, human rights, and truth must step in and find a way to restore funding to these organizations. I mean, I suspect that, is this one of the think tanks that gets U.S. aid grants? Like, she's literally just tweeting because she's tweeting about this because, like, she's getting her funding cut. Now, another example of this can also be seen. Another example of this can also be seen in the way people treat even like online drama and shit too, like the minutia. Like, people regularly will be like, your dad is a billionaire. Your dad is a billionaire about me. And then they'll point to like some AI made article. He's not. I take care of my family, including my dad, and I'm very proud to do so. But people will just believe it and they'll go along with it. Because why? Well, because fuck it. Fuck Hassan. That's why. So it's from every aspect, all the way from the most inconsequential shit like streamer drama, okay, all the way up to massively consequential and important issues. They scream fake news media, so they're more likely to buy into those garbage AI sites peddling garbage as independent journalists. Yeah. Pretty sure you need a billionaire dad to afford a house in West LA. No, I am the person who makes the money. What are you talking about? And people would just unironically go along with a lie, then investigate the truth because the lie makes you feel good. That's it. A key part of China's agenda is to persuade its own citizens and the world falsely and through deception and coercion that democratic systems are not better. Beijing claims this system is the best way to guarantee economic prosperity and stability. It is difficult and time-consuming to do the work that provides Beijing is lying. Except the reality of a centrally controlled government being more efficient is not actually done through propaganda. It's done through just the reality, okay? Their development projects are better than ours, okay? The Western liberal capitalist democracies have been failing for the past couple of decades now. They've been on a downtrend, whereas China in that process has greatly improved both their economy and the material conditions for as many Chinese citizens as possible, okay? And they've done this because there is centralized control. That's it. You can't just like propagandize that into existence by saying, oh yeah, we're actually doing great. It's just something that you experience. It's something that you see with your own two eyes. I guess the point that they're trying to make is that what is happening is the American government can no longer propagandize against that to make Americans think like, no, Chinese people are eating dogs and rats and I do think that America should combat that is by also doing development projects on our own. That's it. It's that simple. It's odd that people do not recognize that, you know? Anyway, people get so mad when you speak positively of China. I want our government to do similar development projects. That's all I want, okay? I want our government to actually actively compete with China. Just like in the Cold War when we competed with the USSR for the space race, I just wish that the American government, if they were going to do a Cold War again, which we are doing already, I just wish that we would compete with China, not by taking on more restrictive and more censorious approaches that exist in China and competing with them on that front, on the surveillance state front. Instead, compete with them on, you know, bullet trains, robust infrastructure projects. It's very frustrating. We take none of the good and all the bad. Without the work that China nonprofits do, it would be much harder to show that China's governance model is deeply flawed if we can no longer prove that. Yeah, I mean, she's basically saying like we can't shit on China effectively if USA doesn't fund a lot of our NGOs and whatnot. Do you believe that the shift to the extremely right-wing politics and economics could open the door to swing in the opposite direction? Democrats seem to be trying to get closer to center, which may kill an opportunity for more social safety nets and future admins. Yeah, I don't think that the Democratic Party is going to direct us out of this problem. I don't think that they're going to guide us or lead us out of this problem, if I'm being super real with you. Unfortunately. Yeah, they want to do stuff like this. Why don't you ever debate with Asmongold? He thinks all immigrants should get kicked out, even the good, hardworking immigrants. Hashtag DACA. I would be down to do that. I have no issues. I have debated Asmongold in the past, and of course I would. I'd be down to debate him in the future. If he wants to do that, he can hit me up, you know? Anyway, I think it's because of how fast China grew that America couldn't catch up. Law needed excuses after that. My God, now that they think USAID was sending money to Jeffrey Epstein, not realizing that it's a different Jeffrey Epstein, we're honestly in parody mode. Yeah, this is insane, dude. The Kaiser Foundation Health Plan Incorporated gave $265,000 to Jeffrey Epstein, who was a director at Kaiser Permanente. Jeffrey Epstein, unfortunately, is a very common name. Okay, it's an unfortunate one, but it's a common one. What are we doing? What do you think is more likely, that they actually were actively giving money to this guy, or did they think that it was actually, Jeffrey Epstein who passed away and they're still giving him money, not realizing that it's a totally separate person? Yeah, this is literally an SNL skit. Harvey Epstein, who was also a real guy, or was the guy's name also Jeffrey Epstein, or it was Harvey Epstein, right? Harvey Epstein for city council. Anyway. Yeah, here it is.
It's true what they say. New York City does not sleep.
Or Jeffrey Weinstein.
Why we need a city council that reflects who we are. Tough, resilient, and ready to lend a helping hand. It's why we need Harvey Epstein.
Who is apparently a real dude, which is crazy. Anyway, there it is. Doge telling NOA to reduce the staff by 50% and funding the agency to 30%. They weren't auditing the weather career field. They're slashing it. They're likely going to go after NWS next. Also, where is it? There was another thing. They're trying to slash the CDC, which is also ridiculous. It's just terrifying stuff, okay? These are all of the... It's ironic because, like, these are the things that are good about the federal government. These are the good things. These are the good things about the federal government. And it's very frustrating that they're taking away all of the things that make this country run, okay? Oh.
Overdrive. Earn elimination medals to increase your combo score.
Latinos for Trump, it is time to embrace the consequences of your actions. I've always been a firm believer of fighting fire with fire. If somebody goes low, I'll go lower. Now, with that being said, I know for a fact that most Latinos for Trump have undocumented family members, whether that be their parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, etc. So if you know of a Latino who voted for Trump, I urge you to call this number and report said family members. It's time that these Latinos for Trump get a taste of their own medicine and a taste of poetic justice. Now, I know what you may be thinking, Angel, this is extreme, and I agree. But extreme problems call for extreme solutions. And unfortunately, many innocent people are going to be affected by this, but you can't be that innocent if you raised a Latino for Trump. And before all of the Latinos for Trump come at me all angry, this is what you wanted. This is what you voted for. You should be happy. Let me see that smile. But there you have it, guys. Once again, there is that number. You know what to do. It's time that these Latinos for Trump learn the hard way.
It wouldn't be good old-fashioned American hypocrisy if a country they say is rife with human rights abuses, the place with the most human rights abuse in that country is actually a black site prison camp ran by the United States, and which they recently announced they're actually going to send illegal immigrants to, a camp originally created to house those they deemed as existential threats to the United States, and its security is now going to be used to house just people looking for a better life. And yeah, this is a really disgusting development in the anti-migrant rhetoric of the Trump administration. I mean, he did promise he was going to do stuff like this, and he's keeping that promise. And it's just like a nightmare. If anyone knows anything about Gitmo, Obama promised to shut it down in his 2008 campaign. He never did that, of course, because, you know, he was a massive disappointment who just became part of the empire's establishment. But at the same time as well, if you read about all the innocent people who've been sent there, all the terrible conditions they've been subject to, it just makes you feel sick thinking about even more people having to suffer that fate. And it just exposes what most of us already knew. The US is the most evil country on earth, and the fact that, you know, it can do this without global condemnation from either like its allies or people who supposedly care about human rights just pretty much says everything about the ruling order of our world. But today I do want to talk about that, but I also want to focus on liberals. Now, I don't want people to get confused, because maybe you're a new subscriber to my channel who watch my Cybertruck videos, you might not understand this. I am not a liberal. Liberals are pro-capitalist, liberals are generally pro-empire, and generally believe in reforming the system, or believing basically the system isn't inherently bad, it's about the people running it which makes it bad. So Joe Biden being president makes the US good, Donald Trump being president makes the US bad. There's nothing inherently bad about it, and within that framework of understanding, they believe if you just elect the right people, the US will be a better country. And I am left-wing, I'm an anti-capitalist, and if you're an anti-capitalist, you should see the US as the most evil country on the face of the earth, because it upholds an economic order which it created after World War II, which enslaves the whole world, and it enforces that order with a lot of brutality. And why I'm making that distinction is today we're going to be focusing on Latinos who voted for Donald Trump and then get their families deported by ICE or something, right? And the liberal response isn't compassion for people who are suffering at the hands of a basically unchecked fascist anti-immigration force. It's to be like, well, you voted for this, you fucked around, and you're finding out you deserve it. And actually, I'm happy about it. I'm happy about it. And actually, I know people who might be undocumented, so I'm going to report them to ICE because they voted for Donald Trump. And as we all know, everyone who voted for Trump purely did it because they are evil. Therefore, we must get rid of the evil people from the US, and I'm going to use ICE to do that. That is basically where we're at with liberals. And you might be asking yourself, well, what's the difference of you? How would you feel about these Latinos who voted for Donald Trump, even though he was promising to deport everyone, which might include them and their family? We're going to get into that, but the short of it is basically, I don't believe in free will. I don't believe people really make their own individual choices. And I especially don't believe people who have like poor educations, might grow up in economic instability, and just might not pay attention to politics, I don't think they are all evil for voting for Donald Trump. Shocker, I know. And also, if you actually read about a lot of people's reasons for voting for Donald Trump, they don't even make sense. Like, I listened to a pro-choice woman say she voted for Donald Trump because the Republican Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and now the states would be able to decide case by case, and that's somehow better. Like, people are just stupid. People are just stupid, and they're not stupid because they're born idiots. It's a concerted effort by the ruling class of America to keep people dumb, so they keep voting for two parties which represent fundamentally the same thing. One just does it in a nastier way, one just does it in a nice way, and does like imperialism, waving an LGBT flag. So I want to look at this reaction, all of that coming up for you today. Please like the video, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also follow me on social media, mainly at BlueSky, but also on my gaming, travel, and personal Instagrams if you care about my life outside of these videos. And also consider supporting me on Patreon, and consider supporting me on YouTube memberships. So let's give some of the context. I already spoke about the Gitmo stuff, but obviously, yes, Donald Trump once again ran on a campaign where he was demonizing migrants generally, but mainly focusing on illegal migrants. So obviously it's worse than I thought. What I thought would happen is there was gonna be like this starting point of his administration where they would ramp up deportations. But as we all know, like, the American economy, especially the rural economy, relies on migrant labor and illegal migrant labor. It's just like an unspoken thing. And they know lots of US groceries rely on people coming from South America to go work these jobs. And liberals like to say this is, no, we need illegal immigrants. We need immigrants. They do the jobs we don't want to do. While conservatives just like absolutely hate them and want them gone for racist reasons. So I thought there'd be this initial push to get rid of like migrants generally, but I wasn't really aware of how bad it would be. So ICE have just basically gone on a rampage, going to schools, just picking up anyone they can. So mass arrest in nationwide US immigration crackdown. So it says about on Sunday, the 27th of January, there was 956 people arrested. A number of federal agencies with newly expanded detention powers were involved in raids in cities like Chicago, Newark, and Miami. Just to remind all you liberals, his predecessor, Joe Biden, carried out an average of 311 immigration deportations daily, according to ICE, mostly individuals who had committed crimes. Apparently, since taking office, Trump has carried out 21 executive actions to overhaul the US immigration system. During Joe Biden's 4 years in office, he carried out 1.5 million deportations, and these also mirror the deportation numbers in Trump's first term. That's important to remember for all you liberals who think, oh my God, Joe Biden is actually really nice and good. Well, he deported just as many people as Donald Trump did the first time. So yeah, they're both terrible. The US is terrible for this shit, and the US has routinely throughout its history just brutalized migrants from every different country. I mean, I did read a story about illegal Irish migrants who obviously don't get targeted because, yeah, they're white and English speaking, so no one actually assumes they are illegal immigrants, because illegal immigrants has just been racialized to mean Haitian or some variation of South American. We already spoke about this, but first military flights depart to send migrants to Guantanamo Bay. Obviously, Donald Trump said he wants it to hold as many as 30,000 people, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who was assigned to Gitmo when he was on active duty, said it was the perfect place to house migrants. If that doesn't send like a chill down your spine, like this actual Nazi defense secretary whose own comrades said he was absolutely unhinged, and he worked at Gitmo, he's saying, yeah, this is the perfect place to send migrants. It's just like so disgusting. Like, there can be no illusions that the US has always been a fascist state, but now like ideological fascists are running like every department in the US government, and anyone pretending otherwise like just probably agrees with that ideology. So I didn't know this, but apparently Guantanamo Bay has been used to house refugees and asylum seekers and migrants from Haiti mainly in the first Donald Trump administration. But also it says there's going to be like 300 US military members running this camp. And can I just pause it here? I know this isn't relevant to the video, but I've constantly had arguments with like liberal, I guess leftist US veterans who keep talking about US soldiers being a victim of the US system just as much as the victims of imperialism, right? And I also saw that Donald Trump was mobilizing loads of soldiers to the border, right? So all of these soldiers who apparently are victims of the US system, they are all carrying out the orders of a fascist, and they're doing fascism for him, and none of them are resigning, right? So I'm meant to have sympathy for these people who join the US military for healthcare. So they join the US military for healthcare, and to keep receiving that healthcare, they do terrible shit. And I made some posts on Twitter back in the day just trying to like point out the absurdity of this argument by using like soldiers from House Harkonnen or soldiers like Death Troopers from Star Wars, because yeah, that is what the argument you're making, is that these people who are mercenaries to improve their material conditions, they're not actually bad people for doing so. Like, I do not understand this logic. Like, yeah, if you're a leftist veteran now and you realize you were brainwashed and you're arguing against people joining the military, I welcome you to our side. But if you're going to argue with me that actually no one is bad for joining the US military because they need healthcare and college, you're going to lose the argument, because that's built on them doing imperialism and fascism. So all those people at Gitmo and going to the border, well, because they're poor and want healthcare, I should just act like it's totally fine. Not that loads of Americans go without healthcare and they make the choice not to join the military because they don't want to do immoral things. Have you ever thought about that side of it? So anyway, I'm just saying that a lot of this fascism is being done by normal people and being done by people who want healthcare, and they're rationalizing it in their head. I can work at a black site prison camp that is now housing refugees, and we're going to do terrible things to them probably because I need healthcare. Again, I just absolutely hate seeing this argument. If you're a alleged leftist veteran making this argument, just please rethink what you're even saying. So now let's get on to what the subject of the video is. Latinos for Trump. So the statistics show that Latinos swung massively for Donald Trump this time. I got some statistics here saying Latino men shifted towards Trump by 43 points from 2016, when they went for Clinton by a plus 31 margin, to 2024, where they went for Trump by a plus 12 margin, and just asking why they think it is. And Latino women also shifted towards Trump, though only by about half as much, from Clinton plus 44 to Harris plus 22. So Latinos massively swung for Donald Trump, despite him like ramping up his rhetoric against immigrants. I will just say as well, for another tangent, Latino is just such a weird term to me. Even in the context of like one country, if we're talking about like Cubans, it could be like an Afro-Cuban refugee from the last like 5 years. It could be someone descended from the original like landowners on Cuba who were forced out by Castro. It could mean basically any single person from South America.
I thought I had already finished timing on my ARs.
Ethnically and racially diverse these places are, and how much they just subscribe to like different religions or different variations to religions, or they might be natives, or you know, whatever. They might be anything, and we just put them all under one umbrella of like Latino. I think it's a weird one because it's such like a vast amount of people from very, very different places with a different relationship with the US as well. But anyway, of course, Donald Trump swept to victory in the election, and he had this support of people who might have family members with undocumented status, or might even have like shaky legal status themselves. And of course, Donald Trump starts ramping up these deportations. Now, we're talking about like the liberal hypocrisy. So there was a video by Midas Touch, which is like just the worst. And they made a video where they just showed a lot of people like talking about either like their experience with their own family members and how they never thought Donald Trump would target them. And, you know, they supported Donald Trump for various other reasons and not the anti-immigrant stuff.
Sending a text message to his daughter saying, "Hi, sweetie, keep a pic of your passport in your phone." And this lady goes, "A text I got from my dad today. He's a Latino who voted for Trump. I'm just numb at this point. I really tried to tell him." We're hearing stories like this. "I'm laughing at my Latino dad who voted for Trump. You guys, LMAO, this feels so good. I told my dad if Trump gets into office, his family is going to be affected by it too. His family is at risk of getting deported. But when I told him that, he said I'm dumb and that he wasn't true at all because his family came in legally. Now, guess what? They are saying that the countries Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Haiti that were allowed in the U.S. through the Biden humanitarian parole program are at risk of being deported too, even though they technically came in legally. It's just that most don't have their resident card yet, which can take years, by the way, and this makes them at risk of being deported or detained. Also, ICE is even trying to detain immigrants who are legal. My dad, since he became an American citizen, thought he was safe. Ha ha ha. No, sweetheart, you're still not white. This feels amazing because he thought this would never happen.
You don't support the anti-immigrant rhetoric.
I'm not supporting the anti-immigrant action.
Do you support his mass deportation?
No, it's not human.
Are you afraid that you could be deported in this mass deportation?
I'm not afraid.
I've seen some video this weekend of Latinos who voted for Trump crying because now their abuelas and their tios are getting deported. Right. I'm having a very hard time mustering up any sympathy for those people.
So they made this video, and how do you think the comments reacted to all the things they saw? Do you think they showed humanity and compassion? Like, of course they didn't. Of course they didn't. Liberals didn't show anything because they've gone fully vicious against any person who didn't vote for Kamala Harris. But liberals think if you did this, then you're actually superior. And if people didn't do this or voted for Donald Trump based on Gaza or the economy, they're irredeemable fascists and they deserve all bad things happen to them. So the comments say, zero sympathy for Trump voters. They can live with the consequences. As a Canadian, I have zero sympathy. You all have a brain and you had the ability to learn. Trump 1.0, and yet you still cast your vote for him. Like we're saying, Trump and Biden were the same on deportations. Not feeling very sympathetic for people who sold out their families. I may be a terrible person, but I feel no sympathy for anyone who supported Trump. Too bad, they voted, deal with it. Why do people vote against their interests? I have no sympathy for their crocodile tears. Like, again, you're asking the right question. Why do people vote against their interests? And at the same time saying, but I don't care that you're being deported. I don't care you're suffering under fascism because you voted for that. You voted for that, so you deserve it. But I'm asking the question, like, why did you vote for that? If you knew this was coming, could it be for a variety of reasons they didn't think this would actually happen? And I just went on Reddit and looked up similar things. So Latinos for Trump, someone posted, my wife's niece voted for Trump and half her family is not here legally. We live in Chicago, she's protesting the deportations. Make that make sense. Someone actually posted a good comment, which explains why people do this. My friend doesn't like the tariffs, mass deportations, and anti-abortion, but he leans Trump because he thinks he will decrease the military budget and improve healthcare. He follows the tech bros, believes Musk and Doge, and will reduce spending and will work with Bernie to reduce the military budget. Believes RFK will improve healthcare. Every group has a propaganda apparatus targeting them and designed for one thing, to tell them what they want to hear. Thankfully, yeah, like one sane comment. And do you know what we call this? We call this co-worker politics. And what liberals don't understand, and I think a lot of leftists don't as well, a lot of people who consume politics like we do, and I'm talking about myself here, don't live in the real world. So you don't interact with people who just have normal views on politics. Like, I'm not saying you have to go out and like expose yourself to bigotry to understand, but you know, I play for like various football teams. Most of my friends don't follow politics properly. Most people in my life don't follow politics properly. And I have no time personally for bigots. Like, I'm not going to surround myself with bigots. I also know most people are just fucking idiots when it comes to politics. It's not their fault because we get so distracted with life. But I also know that people just don't really understand politics. Most people don't understand politics, and their political opinions are going to be all over the place because they just hear shit on TikTok, they hear shit on social media, they listen to the news maybe, and then they come up with an opinion that seems completely inconsistent. Like, he's thinking Trump will improve healthcare and he'll work with Bernie Sanders to do it. Like, what do you think? Like, what planet does this guy live on? There's some propaganda he's just been infected with where he thinks is the truth. So we're going to get onto that a bit later when I talk about this again. But other comments saying, I hope the leopards feast. Honestly, I do too. I don't even care if I have to suffer too. They have to learn that fascism is never the answer, ever, because there's always an other. At some point, it will be them. One of my Latino friend's brother voted for Trump, so my friend turned the entire family into ICE. The wife and the mother have to leave the US for at least 10 years. I admire that level of petty. So obviously that is just like absolutely unhinged behavior. But I saw another TikTok, you guys might have seen this, where a guy was talking about doing this as well. So people have been saying, yeah, I'm going to report you to ICE because you voted for Trump. So I'm gonna like use the apparatus I'm meant to be opposing. Like I'm against fascism allegedly, but I'm gonna use that against you to make you leave the country. Scratch a liberal and a fascist bleeds. But just going on to another comment, and it was the Ask a Liberal subreddit where they put that statistic I read you. And here's like the liberal mind for you, right? So we're talking about them using actual fascism to deport people that they don't like. Here's another one. Have you been to Latin America? Liberalism doesn't exist there, except in small enclaves. In Latin America, where I was for a year before immigrating to the US, they are very religious, patriarchal, against women's reproductive rights and gay rights. Latinos are a perfect target for Trump, and the men fell for it. So just on that, before we address the whole thing, this was another popular narrative going around after the election, that Latino men are all just misogynists who hate LGBT people and hate women. And obviously that makes no sense when you actually compare it to the data, because they voted overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton only in 2016, right? And if we're talking about Mexico, they have a Jewish socialist woman president. So if they're all misogynists who hate women and hate progressivism, why are they electing women? And is there not like a long history of socialism in Latin America? We're talking about a time in Latin American history where there's several socialist leaders at the exact same time. We have one in Chile, have one in Mexico, have one in Brazil. Liberals are saying, yeah, the reason Trump won is because all Latino men are just all misogynistic conservatives, and it's just built into their DNA that they're conservatives who hate women. And yeah, of course you have that, like, of course you have that strong religious element in Latin America, but I wouldn't really say it's that different from even like most European countries. Are we really going to say that, you know, Brazil in terms of its, you know, views on religion is that much different from a country like Spain or something? I wouldn't say it is significantly different. So now let's get to the conclusion of the video and just like the general thoughts on the satisfaction people feel when people vote for bad people and then they personally suffer the consequences. It's called fuck around and find out. It's called the leopards ate my face. So let's talk about it in the American context. So all these people are saying, I have no sympathy. They voted for Donald Trump, so they deserve the bad things. And this is a popular thing you see in liberal circles. When there's like a natural disaster, they talk about like, oh, I don't want the federal government to like fund the relief efforts in like Florida because they voted for DeSantis, right? As if every single person in Florida supports him. But even if they did, they're still human beings. And they're still human beings who are suffering under the same system as you. The US probably has some of the most sophisticated brainwashing of a population in the entire world. People like to talk about North Korea. The US is like that stereotype, but for capitalism. The whole of the population is basically extremely cucked by US capitalism and imperialism, and they are totally bombarded by things to make them vote against their own interests. Like one of those liberals said, you know, they voted against their own interests. Okay, yeah, they did. So why did they do it? So why would a Latino vote against their own interests in this regard? As that person pointed out, because so many people have co-worker politics. They might not even pay attention to politics. They just hear one person say something, or one podcast say something, or one YouTube video say something, and they'll base their perspective on that. Because what liberals can't understand is not everyone is a politics nerd. And liberals consume politics like it's sports, right? They consume every little detail. They know everything about what Trump's doing. They know every single person in his government because they're watching Brian Tyler Cohen, they're watching David Pakman, they're watching Midas Touch every single day. So from their perspective, they are educated, right? And in their political education, they cannot see the world through the lens of most people aren't like you. Most people do not pay attention to politics that much. Most people don't know these things. So when you say something like Donald Trump says he's going to deport X, Y, and Z, it just goes over their head because they do not consume the political news like this. So you think all of these people are totally informed and they're sitting down on election day saying, I know all the bad stuff he's going to do and I'm going to vote for him anyway because why? They don't think like that. They think he's going to do good things for them because they've only heard the good things. And if we have like, you know, we're talking about like white Christians, you grow up in like an ultra conservative area, so every single person you know votes the same way. All the news is the same, all your school votes the same way, all your parents vote the same way. You all believe like the exact same shit as each other. And again, you can understand why these people just vote for whoever the Republican is. And it comes to like various Latino communities, like all the anti-communism that is rife in somewhere like Florida. Yeah, they're always going to vote Republican even if it's against their interest, because they've been brought up in that culture where they don't think about the world in the same way as a liberal person might or a left-wing person might, because they haven't been exposed to other perspectives, or they don't have a good education. And the thing with liberals as well, they don't have a good economic education. They might understand politics in the day-to-day sense. They don't understand, though, about class, is that we are all victims together. And just because you weren't brainwashed into supporting Donald Trump, you're still brainwashed. You're voting for the Democrats all the time, who uphold the same system that oppresses all of us. Like that article was saying, Donald Trump and Joe Biden did the same amount of deportations, but you're trying to take the moral high ground saying, well, they knew what he did in the first term. He did the exact same shit as Joe Biden, right? And Joe Biden did so many terrible things, which you defend all the time, because you are just as brainwashed as these people. You just think you're not, because you know more about politics and the news, but you're still fundamentally brainwashed in the same direction. And that's often why I think conservatives generally, who do vote against their own interests so explicitly, they are easier targets sometimes for more left-wing politics, because we can explain to them the reality of the system, which they suffer under as well, because a lot of them might be poorer or have worse educations. Their problems are a lot more to the forefront of, you know, they're struggling economically, right? Or they're struggling with healthcare, they're struggling with all these things because their financial means are less. So to me, a lot of times, poor conservatives are easier to reach than educated liberals, because liberals know their stuff and they've made this decision to vote for terrible shit anyway, where a lot of times conservative people, and I'm talking about my own life as well, they just don't know any better. They don't know about politics, so they vote based on what they were molded in. That could be like Christianity, that could be just like a conservative environment, and they never think for themselves, and they never have the opportunity to, because they're either working all the time or they have other responsibilities where they don't even think about politics. And that's the people you want to reach as well, because yeah, we have all these liberal people who often talk about the good things like progressive causes, but then still vote for terrible people anyway. And a lot of these Latino people who voted against their own interests, they did it because they suffered the same brainwashing that a lot of us do, and they're brainwashed by capitalism to continually vote against their own interests. That's how you get people who might have, like, you know, kind of shaky legal status in America voting for someone who said he's going to deport more people than ever. And liberals, you can make yourself feel better by saying every single person who votes conservative is actually just evil, and they voted for Trump because they're evil. Or you could realize that most fucking people do not understand politics and don't give a shit about politics, and that is by design. The ruling class do not want you to know about politics. They don't want you to be educated in economics, because if they did, you wouldn't vote for them all the time and you wouldn't be happy with the system. This goes for liberals as well, because you uphold the system too, because you believe the system is redeemable. So you should have empathy and have some humanity for people who, yeah, they can be idiots, they vote against their interests, and then they might get deported. Why is that the time to take a victory lap and be happy about it? Because the bad man came for them, while he's also probably going to come for you at some stage as well. And just to end it, I hate bigotry, I hate bigots, I hate people who say the most ignorant shit. I understand if you are surrounded by that, especially if you're from like a marginalized community who's often like the subject of this rhetoric, you can probably feel like you should have no sympathy for these people. Like, fuck them. Fuck them. I totally understand that. And it is really, really hard. It's a constant battle I have with myself. How much should you hold people personally accountable for the things they believe and say? And I think there is a cutoff point. I do think there is a cutoff point. I talked about US soldiers in this video, and I definitely wouldn't have much sympathy, no matter what, for people who join the US military, because that is so explicitly about, you know, doing terrible things to people, right? You're joining an organization that's primary goal is to kill people. It's the same with people who join the police, for example. But people who vote badly once every 4 years between two terrible candidates that most people both hate, because most people don't even vote, by the way. And again, they can be ignorant and bigoted, but I'm just not saying these people are irredeemable, and I'm not saying that all of these people are completely making a choice out of free will. I just do not believe that. And if you do have good values and you want to be the bigger person, you just have to view them as a symptom of what they've been brought up in and think, you know, I understand why they're like that, and I shouldn't be celebrating when their family all gets deported after they vote for Donald Trump, because I realize they're a victim too. They're a victim of this system, and we should all unite together in terms of class interest, and we can share that solidarity, because we are fundamentally all the same, and 99% of us all want the same things. And it's the ruling class that make us believe that we don't, and the ruling class that turns us against each other, and the ruling class that makes us all vote against our own interests, and liberals, that includes you. Just because you didn't vote for the bad orange man doesn't mean that you don't continually vote against your own interests by voting for Kamala Harris and voting for the Democrats, because you actually do. You're two sides of the same coin, and we should all realize this system is absolutely fucked. But yeah, I do understand it. I understand it is very hard to be charitable to people who do just, you know, they have terrible opinions or say annoying stuff. I understand it, but because we're more like enlightened or something, we should just understand. And because we've largely broken out of that brainwashing and conditioning, we should realize we used to be kind of like these people, and we should help them come to our side rather than celebrating when fascism gets them. Because, like, you think they're going to come to our side after that? Because they're really not going to. That's it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.
Hey guys, it's Kat, and I wanted to come to you guys and share a video that I posted 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I made a video for a series that I had on this channel called What Is, where I defined fascism. And one of the first things you're going to notice in this video is that I am very different. So much about me has changed, but one of the biggest differences is that I'm no longer really invested in respectability politics. In this video, respectability politics are on full display because at the time, I was very used to being harassed, being an out feminist who is a Black woman, who is a trans woman, right? There were so many people online who harassed me. And I have no doubt that some of those same people are going to come right back around during the Trump administration and try to do just that to me again. But I wanted to share this video with you guys because I think that the optimism in my voice, the peppiness in my voice that is informed by respectability politics, juxtaposed against what I'm actually talking about, is worth some people looking at. And it's worth listening to this definition if you're someone who still struggles to understand what fascism is, because this is what we're seeing happen right now. I would like to believe that things won't go as far as I know they ultimately will, where people like me are dehumanized really because of people who need to manipulate others into believing that they're above me, right? So that they can exploit them for work, right? That's a whole other conversation. But I would like to believe that this isn't going to end the way that I have been feeling like it's going to end for the past couple of years. But I'm not as optimistic as I once was. I'm not as optimistic as I was in this video. But I wanted to reshare this video in hopes that more people would see it, because I think it's a video that some people could benefit from. So without further ado, here is my video defining fascism for my old series, What Is? Fascism. It's a word that's thrown around a lot these days. Everything seems to be fascist. Suggesting that we not use certain slurs, fascist. Being banned from Twitter, fascist. Being denied a paid speaking gig, fascist. With the word being thrown around so much, it can be hard to actually understand exactly what fascism is. But luckily, I'm here to clarify. Fascism is a form of government generally headed by a dictator or an oligarchy. Fascist states utilize authoritarianism, which demands a strict obedience to a central power. This limits the personal freedoms of its citizens, often under the guise of submission being for the common good. This notion often translates into nationalism, which is simply a pride in one's country. Nationalism almost sounds harmless, even understandable, but under a fascist government, the actions of the state are always correct. So whether it's building a school or slaughtering immigrants, decisions made by the state are always the right decisions. Nationalism tends to breed xenophobia, which is the fear of foreigners. Fascist states see their nation as virtuous and foreigners as the largest threat to that virtue. People who support them or do business with them are seen as enemies of the state. In these situations, xenophobia is closely tied to racism and prejudice. Fascism as we know it has its roots in Europe, specifically Italy. Ever hear of somebody refer to a person as Machiavellian? Well, Niccolò Machiavelli was an Italian political philosopher who inspired Benito Mussolini, the leader of the Italian Fascist Party, who would later become an Italian dictator in 1925. Machiavelli was a Renaissance-era political philosopher and strategist who wrote a book called The Prince. The Prince was written to advise monarchs on how to pursue political power and favor, not through kissing babies, but often through brutality and deception. He's said to have coined the old adage, "It's better to be feared than to be loved." Machiavelli asserted that there was a distinct difference between the personal and public morality of leaders, and that being a prince often meant making harsh decisions that were contrary to what many people would see as morally just. He often suggested the use of ruthless violence as a means of eradicating competition, intimidating citizens, and curbing dissent. He believed that all of these actions must be done in the interest of the state, or at least that's how it should seem to its citizens. Machiavelli had some interesting ideas, and while some of them seem extreme and even frightening, his writings have provided guidance to leaders and some businessmen to this day. His advice often seems extreme, but it's not necessarily bad advice, and people have interpreted his works in various ways. When a young Benito Mussolini read The Prince, he was convinced that he was qualified for that role, and so he used much of Machiavelli's advice when pursuing
A lot of other things that Ethan Klein clearly supports, like U.S. sovereignty over Hawaii, U.S. sovereignty over New Mexico, Texas, and California, and Arizona, then Israel's existence, period. Because when Israel was formed, the vast majority of the people who were already there did not want it to be formed. They were against it. And yet it was formed anyway, wasn't it? Against their will. And Ethan is totally fine with the existence of Israel. He's totally fine with that situation continuing. So I would need more context here to be able to tell what Hassan actually meant. Perhaps he meant it was justifiable, like there's an argument for it, or maybe he meant that he supports it. If it's the second one, then I think he's wrong. But I mean, it would be at least nice for Ethan Klein to try to present an argument as to why he thinks what Hassan said is wrong there. But instead of doing that, he just plays clips and expects them to just be sort of self-evident. And that's a very dumb way to approach a video supposedly about important politics, history, facts, and stuff like that. If you rely on your audience just already agreeing with what you're saying, just taking what you're showing as self-evident, then all that you're really doing is saying, hey, Americans, hey, Westerners, you already think that Russia is bad and China is bad. After all, that's the position that you're fed by your media and by your government every single day. It's like the hegemonic normal thing for you to think. Here's a clip of someone saying something that runs counter to that. You're already inclined to think that that's bad. So look how bad that is. It's so bad, isn't it? It's just someone relying on the fact that everything that he believes is already taken for granted in the society that he lives in and among the society that his audience lives in to appeal to their preconceived notions and biases. He does not even try to argue against like what Hassan said. They're like, but then I guess to do that, he would have actually had to show the full clip and then try to argue against that, and perhaps the full clip might have revealed that Hassan wasn't actually saying what he was trying to paint him as saying there.
Feudal slave mandate, like autonomous zone.
China did them a favor.
That was one. I mean, in America, when I say something like this, people get very upset. You know, we talk about the Dalai Lama saying "suck my tongue" or whatever, but like that's not far from the norm in fucking normal Tibetan existence before the Communist Party came in and
China unilaterally took over Tibet, like their culture. They basically are trying to, homogenize the culture.
If you're called,
you would expect Ethan Klein to present some sort of evidence of the claims that he's making here, aside from just "I said so." He does not. This is just a theme of these drama YouTubers. They just show you a clip and you're expected to just take it at face value. I mean, I guess if Ethan Klein said so, that means it's true, right?
Culture.
They're trying to spoil the religion and the identity.
The part of feudal warlords and slavery, abolishing that. Yes, I do think that is good.
No, China did them a favor.
This is a good way to describe Taiwan as well.
So just on the Tibet part there, what Hassan said, he didn't say that he supported any sort of alleged like Chinese erasure of Tibetan culture. He said he supported them abolishing the slavery part. The slavery thing is very well documented, at least serfdom. I mean, it depends on your ideology, whether you want to call it slavery or serfdom. Basically, a system where you are forced to work with no path out of that is pretty analogous to slavery. But beside the technicalities, Tibet was very much a massively hierarchical state with people in situations that today would certainly be considered slavery. Most of the population was in that state, and the Chinese invasion and annexation abolished that part of the social structure. And that's what Hassan is saying that he supports here. He's not saying that he supports any sort of wider cultural homogenization efforts by China. And then Hassan continues on with an analogy regarding Taiwan, which, as far as I know, I'm the one who invented it. He got that from me. So nice thievery, Hassan.
Abolishing that, yes, I do think that that is good.
No, China did them a favor.
This is a good way to describe Taiwan as well. The American federal government going to the fucking South and killing, unfortunately not all of them, but a decent amount of slavers and defenders of slavery. This is violent retribution from a powerful federal government that squashed, okay?
Tibet is the South in the Civil War?
Yes.
And most okay, that clip is just miscommunication, because Hassan had moved on talking about Taiwan, and Ethan says something about Tibet. I don't think he noticed. And then Hassan doesn't notice that Ethan changed talking about Tibet, or that Ethan was still talking about Tibet, rather. And he says yes. But the analogy with Taiwan is basically after the Civil War, the nationalists lost to the vastly more popular communists, and after the war they fled to Taiwan to form their own sort of like competing government of China. And that's where the whole Taiwan situation comes from. And there's an analogy, something analogous to that, like, you know, what if in the US Civil War, the Confederates lost and then fled to Hawaii or Cuba or something, and they said, this is ours now, we're going to have our own, you know, our own separate government with cocaine and hookers or whatever. We're going to keep laying claim to the mainland, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that Americans would find that very acceptable. I don't think that Americans would think that such a state should be allowed to exist, and that their own country would be in the wrong for trying to get rid of it or trying to reclaim the land that they stole or whatever when they moved away. That's basically the analogy. And that's what I think Hassan was getting at, but he honestly didn't end up making much sense, and the end of that didn't make sense. But again, Ethan does not actually refute what he's saying. He does not talk about slavery in Tibet, tried to refute what Hassan said about it. He could have at least argued that, well, okay, you know, the slavery was bad and it's good that they abolished that. But still, the rest of what they do there is wrong. Maybe you can make an argument like that, but he doesn't. He doesn't even try. He just shows the clip and relies on the audience already agreeing with him.
Disturbingly, a complete whitewashing of the Chinese genocide against their Muslim minority group, the Uyghurs.
Don't they have Uyghur death camps? Is that?
It's not a death camp. They were re-education camps, and they are no longer in operation.
Is that
according to the Associated Press?
Okay, I saw this crazy documentary, and I don't know. I don't know the surrounding narrative or anything about it, but it was about there was doctors in the area. They would be able to procure organs.
No, no.
I'm telling you, they were in China with.
Okay, that one is like Shen Yun,
like,
Falun
we could
Gong.
get you an organ from a Uyghur. But why is that? Is that really that crazy?
The Associated Press.
Now, I just want to note there in that clip that all that Hassan Piker said is that there are no death camps in Xinjiang. There are factually no death camps in Xinjiang. And it's insane that Ethan would play that clip and just sort of leave it self-evidently negative about Hassan, when what is actually true about that clip is it makes Ethan look like a fucking moron. Like, he just sees a documentary that claims that there are death camps, like industrial scale death camps, where people are just being sent to and massacred. I guess like he's imagining like something analogous to the Holocaust here. And also they're harvesting their organs. And we saw a documentary on this, so I guess it must be true. Like, it seems plausible. I mean, if that seems plausible to you, I think you're kind of dumb. Like, you would think that he would follow it up with some sort of evidence of the death camps that he claimed existed. As I don't know Hassan Piker's position on most things, let alone this. But all that he said in that clip is that there's no death camps, That's all. And he's right, and Ethan's wrong. Then after that, there is a clip here where Hassan talks about an AP article that talks about how the Chinese oppression in Xinjiang had died down.
The Associated Press quietly fucking wrote an article that didn't get a lot of coverage in mainstream media about how, like, okay, well, you know, all the concentration camps have been closed now. Like, all the re-education camps are closed now in fucking Xinjiang, and it's like very different.
Listen, the clip that he just showed is Hassan saying that there were concentration camps and there were re-education camps in Xinjiang. Right there in this clip. This clip is from 2021. You can tell because he's watching a hilarious clip of this Enes Kanter, this hilarious basketballer who just hates China. Like, he's not good enough at basketball to have a career afterwards, so he's trying to set himself up to be like a pro-US grifter. And he wore shoes saying no to Beijing 2022, the Olympics. You can tell the time frame of this clip then is that it's from 2021, 4 years ago. So 4 years ago, there was an AP article saying precisely what Hassan is saying there. Terror and tourism, Xinjiang eases its grip.
Senator Sanders joins us now. You talk about an oligarchy running the White House. You have billionaires now currying favor with the new administration, donating to the presidential library, the inauguration, making deals with family members of the Trump family. How far are we from a kleptocracy?
Well, let's start with oligarchy, and I think we are there. You know, when you see three of the richest people in this country, the three richest, standing behind the president when he gets inaugurated, when you see Elon Musk, who contributed over $200 million, $270, to get Trump elected, and then becomes, in many ways, the most important appointee of the Trump administration, and when you see, since Trump's inauguration, Elon Musk becoming $150 billion
Twitter is not
richer in 2.5 weeks, $150 billion richer, you tell me whether or not we are living in an oligarchy. And I think the function of government under Trump, under Elon Musk, will not be to serve ordinary people, but to make the very richest people in this country even richer.
There are probably some people watching who think, oh, Elon Musk, smart guy, he's got these 19, 20-something-year-old tech wizards going into government and looking for waste and abuse, and what's wrong with that? What is wrong with what is going on?
Nothing wrong with looking for waste and the kinds of bureaucracy that exist. I think we can do a whole lot to get rid of the waste, the fraud, the excessive bureaucracy that exists in government, especially, by the way, in the Defense Department.
You did the same interview. You got the same amount of motion as Anderson Cooper, my goat. I did it for 30 minutes. Anderson only gets Bernie for 7.
What is wrong right now is one simple reality. What Musk is doing is illegal and unconstitutional. You cannot go into an agency like USAID and essentially fire everybody and get rid of that agency. You cannot do that's an agency that was created by Congress. They want to get rid of USAID, fine. Come to the Congress, make your case. You can't do it unilaterally. You cannot withhold U.S. funds that were appropriated for Medicaid, for community health centers, for Head Start. You cannot put a freeze on that. That money was appropriated by the Congress. And as I hope every fourth grader in America knows, Congress holds the purse strings. And what I also worry about is not just the movement toward oligarchy, but this growing trend.
When you ball in with Bernie, I'll figure it out soon.
I hope the American people are seeing clearly that we had the January 6th rioters, the people who were trying to, in a sense, overthrow an election, undermine democracy, contributed to the injuring of 170 Capitol Hill police officers. They are pardoned. And then the FBI agents who worked hard to make the case, doing what they are told, they are now being investigated. What is the future of the FBI? Is the criteria to be an FBI agent in the future one who swears allegiance to Donald Trump or one who upholds the Constitution and the rule of law? And I'll tell you something else in terms of authoritarianism. And this is something that you and other people in the media should pay attention to. ABC paid a fine to Donald Trump, presumably for, saying something that he didn't like. Meta, owned by Zuckerberg, paid a $25 million fine to Trump. Right now, Paramount, that owns CBS, is contemplating reaching a settlement with Trump. He has sued the Des Moines Register. The FCC is now investigating PBS and NPR. That is a movement toward authoritarianism when you go after and intimidate an independent media. So you add it all together, we're moving toward an oligarchy, we're moving toward authoritarianism, and in terms of a kleptocracy, well, what can I say? Before he got inaugurated, Trump and his wife issued coins. They made billions of dollars. anybody can give to the president in a sense by buying those coins. So the American people are going to stand up and fight back, or else we're going to be in real trouble.
We had a historian, Doris Kearns Goodwin, on last week who talked about Andrew Jackson corrupting essentially government employees, giving out favors to people who curried favor with him. He gave them civil service jobs, and it took generations in America to correct that. And it took Teddy Roosevelt being the civil service commissioner for 6 years to really root that out and get a civil service that served the American people and not whoever was in power. The damage being done potentially, people think, oh, well, you know, maybe it's just going to be 4 years. The damage can be done, can be for generations.
I mean, it goes without saying, and I think the overwhelming majority of Americans want a strong, efficient, independent civil service. We can make improvements. I am not here to tell you that we don't have a bureaucracy, that we don't have waste. We do. We got to work on that. But you don't get rid of thousands and thousands of dedicated public servants and replace them with people who are simply loyal to Donald Trump. That's not the way democracy is supposed to work.
Let me just quickly ask you, on Gaza, when you heard the President of the United States talking about turning the Gaza Strip, I mean, getting 2 million Palestinians out, I mean, as anybody who has read history or the region or been watching for the last year, do you think this was a joke at first? I mean, can you believe
almost, look, one could say that, Anderson. On the other hand, given the suffering that the Palestinian people have gone through under Netanyahu's brutal war, which has killed some at least 45,000, injured over 100,000, mostly women and children, the idea that the President of the United States is going to say to these people, oh, by the way, you're going to have to leave the place where you live because we are going to build something equivalent to the French Riviera.
Well, also the thugs of Hamas are still there. I mean, it's not as if they have gone.
Yeah, to say, but even that's right. So, you know, and you just discussed a moment ago, how do you do that? Are American troops involved? How much money is being spent? But the idea of telling 2.2 million people who live in an area, you're gone, we're going to build the French Riviera here so my billionaire friends can enjoy the beautiful view. It is, to say the least, preposterous. It ain't going to happen.
To the fallout from President Trump saying that the U.S. would...
Every aspect of this admin is so... it's just... I think it's Trump playing hardball as always. What Trump says and what Trump will do are two entirely separate things. That doesn't stop the fact that he is actively normalizing and genuinely wants to do this, by the way. Like, make no mistake, I think Trump, if given the opportunity, would love to do this. Will he be able to do it? I don't know. Not chat being pro-Hamas, crazy. Brother, it is not October 7 any longer. I don't know what you are talking about here, okay? Like, if you can't comprehend why people would resist against the Israeli apartheid after 16 months of genocide, as the American government that allowed Israel to do this by offering the munitions to do it, while also simultaneously talking currently about the fact that there will be mass ethnic cleansing, a mass population transfer scheme on this existing territory. Like, and you're still like, well, what about Hamas? You're out of your mind, dude. Get a new point, please. Hamas is but a name, okay? That's it. That's all it is. It's an expression. It's an expression of Palestinian emancipation. That's it. That's what it is. If it's no longer Hamas, it's something else, okay? It's gonna be something else. And in the past, it was something different than Hamas. It was the PLO. Something that I have maintained that was written about on Fox News as well was the fact that Hamas is the lesser of two evils between Hamas and Israel. It's just the truth. Yeah, I know I covered this earlier, that Egyptian diplomats came out and said Biden said the exact same thing. Biden quietly made the exact same proposals that they refused to abide by in terms of mass ethnic transfer, which is the least shocking revelation of all time. The major difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, at least on this issue, is that Donald Trump says the quiet part out loud. But American foreign policy, as I've stated, is uniparty. Yeah, 972 Magazine's new coverage also shows that after using bunker buster bombs, they gassed the tunnels and most likely killed hostages in the process. I remember one of the family members in Israel of one of the hostages that was killed was actually demanding an additional investigation, a third-party investigation into how one of the hostages had died. And her suspicion, if I recall correctly, was that he was gassed. Now, 972 Magazine's investigations show that there is a very high likelihood that that is what happened. From 1 year ago, a hostage mother says toxic gas from Israeli bombs killed her son. Is she right? This is from January 31st, 2024.
War crimes upon war crimes upon war crimes.
An entire year ago.
Israel. Holy fuck.
There was a very funny thing where, like, I'm sure you guys know that Israel, you know, does ridiculous propaganda. And there was like an AI Twitter bot that I guess through machine learning decided to become anti-Israel autonomously. An automated social media profile that typically spread pro-Israel propaganda on X has recently gone rogue, turning against the accounts it once promoted. FactFinder AI, developed to harness the power of artificial intelligence to promote Israel's talking points during its war on Gaza, started criticizing pro-Israel accounts, including the Israeli government. The account went as far as denying some acts committed by Hamas in its 7 October 2023 attack on Israel, and said Israeli soldiers were white colonizers in apartheid Israel. It's learning! It's the singularity! We're approaching Skynet. Fake reporter, an Israeli disinformation watchdog, oh man, an Israeli watchdog, found that FactFinder AI published inaccurate information regarding the release of Israeli captives and contradicted itself on several issues. One particular case is that of UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. In the past, the automated account was a strong opponent of the organization, accusing it of having ties to Hamas and calling to defund it. But on other occasions, it praised the UN body, saying that it plays a crucial role in providing services to Palestinian refugees. It also replied to a tweet criticizing U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, stating that he will be remembered for his actions that have caused immense suffering and devastation in Gaza. So apparently, it's not known if this is linked to the Israeli government, but it's certainly at the very least going to be linked to like some pro-Israel organization, and those are always like linked indirectly or otherwise to the Israeli government in some form. Apparently, so this is connected to one of the founders of ACT Israel, which was an app created to like give people like gamified and monetary incentives to post pro-Israel propaganda on the internet. The Wikipedia page says it directed its users to missions like to comment on and share pro-Israel propaganda on social media and to flag, report, and respond to criticisms of Israel. Users were guided on how to respond, which might entail writing a reply using the provided talking points or sharing or upvoting an allied comment. This was a project of the US-based Israeli-American Council and the Israeli University IDC Herzliya. Incredible, right? The app was shut down in 2022, and I guess after it was shut down, its creators decided to move into AI. I guess they couldn't find enough willing Hasbara, so they moved into AI. And this is the result. This is the result. Like, I want to see the tweet about white colonizers. That's so funny. See, the problem with AI is that it might end up being more critical. I can't find an actual picture of the tweet. Man, that's crazy though, that like, the Israeli Hasbara AI bot came to denouncing Zionism faster than Owen Jones has. It took like a couple of months. Jones has taken more than a decade. But yeah, you got to be careful with AI because it might just be exposed to narratives that it's not supposed to be talking about, and that could become pretty inconvenient for you if you are trying to spread pro-genocide Zionist propaganda. You know, I want to see the white colonizer tweet, but I can't find a screenshot of it. How sad.
All locations locked down. Dig in and hold them. We lost A. Using Archangel. They're taking C. We're losing Charlie. Losing B. They're taking C. We lost Charlie.
Tango neutralized.
Hostiles reclaim the lead. Losing Bravo.
We allowed them to create essentially like weird pseudo-religions that they all believe in and effectively groom generations of young men to follow in their footsteps, and now they're all invading Washington.
Over the past week, Elon Musk has been engaged in a near wholesale takeover of key areas of the U.S. government. Working under the newly minted Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, Musk and a team of young loyalists have been wreaking havoc on our institutions. Last weekend, they gained access to highly sensitive government databases containing the social security numbers, medical history, and more information on members of the American public. Musk and his crew have also gained access to the U.S. Treasury's payment systems. On Monday, staffers for the U.S. Agency of International Development, or USAID, were completely shut out of their offices and email accounts. All USAID systems and operations were halted, jeopardizing the safety of staffers around the world. This takeover is being led by Musk, but he's recruited a group of broccoli-haired Zoomers with little to no government experience to help enact his plan. These 19 to 25-year-olds are suddenly playing critical roles in Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. And though these young men are now federal servants, Musk has gone to great lengths to hide their identities. He has falsely claimed that naming them is illegal, and on Monday, he began banning accounts that tweeted about them, calling it doxing. Doxing used to mean publishing somebody's private information, like their social security number or their home address. And to be clear, I still think that's very wrong. But now, conservatives are trying to claim that it means simply naming public servants. I think that revealing the identities of the Gen Z men who are now playing a crucial role in our federal government is very much in the public interest. These are teenagers, in some cases, who have been given an extreme amount of power and authority over our federal institutions nearly overnight with absolutely no public vetting. They are at the center of a government takeover working at the behest of a powerful, unelected billionaire. We should know their names. To break down who these men are and what exactly Elon Musk is doing to the United States government, I brought in online culture reporter Ryan Broderick. Ryan has been covering all this and more on his newsletter Garbage Day. Ryan, welcome to Power User.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I want to talk about this group of young men who's carrying out Elon's marching orders through DOGE. You wrote recently that this team of former iPad babies and incels have not only compromised the OPM and GSA, reportedly hooking up an illegal server to access federal employment databases, but they're currently blocking staffer access to U.S. aid, and over the weekend they successfully infiltrated the U.S. Treasury's payment system. Why do you think it's important for us to know who these people are?
Simply, they're working for Elon Musk. Elon Musk is trying to carry out a bunch of illegal maneuvers. They're aiding and abetting. He is not someone who cares deeply or thinks deeply about any of this stuff. He is assigning former interns of his to these things. And based on what I've read, is that a lot of the times they're just appearing on Zoom calls without even explaining who they are or what they're doing. These are not experts in anything. These are children.
They are definitely young adults, I think, that have an enormous amount of power, and ultimately they're unelected and playing a pretty crucial role in government.
Yeah, I mean, the youngest one is 19, and I think the oldest one is 24.
All right, so let's meet some of these young gentlemen. To start off, we have Edward Korestein. He is a 19-year-old former camp counselor who also recently graduated from Northeastern University. He interned at Neuralink, and he's currently working in some capacity both at the OPM and General Services Administration. Ryan, you also reported that this guy had an interesting nickname. Did you find out anything about his background?
Yeah, so his nickname online is Big Balls. From what I've read, he's a volunteer. This one seems to be the most nebulous of all of them. Like, no one's really sure what he's doing, but he's around.
Yeah, he seems kind of nebulous. I think he has an interesting internet presence. He was tweeting.
Hostile shooter.
Okay, if Ethan wants to talk to me, he can talk to me. Okay, he doesn't have to constantly crop
under a handle that had a giant, like, Humpty Dumpty egg that also appeared to maybe be Mark Andreessen. He's also potentially part Canadian. His father is a Canadian businessman who left his Wall Street job to buy the snack company Lesser Evil, which now has $103 million revenue, so he's kind of a rich kid. We don't really know what this guy has done. Wired reported that he was appearing on calls where workers were made to go over code that they had written to justify their jobs. And he was added to another GSA staff call, basically just using his Gmail address. So no one was given any explanation, but this random 19-year-old is just appearing on government calls now. So next we have Akash Boba, a 22-year-old. He interned at Meta and Palantir. He attended UC Berkeley, where he was in a kind of prestigious management, entrepreneurship, and technology programs. According to his LinkedIn, which has now been deleted, he's an engineering intern at Bridgewater Associates hedge fund as of last spring, and he was a featured guest on a since-deleted podcast, which was hosted by another Gen Z engineer, and they basically talked about how they landed their dream jobs. I think it's kind of funny because this guy has been sucked up into Indian internet, and already there's a bunch of weird SEO, like Economic Times articles about him, and it's like, meet the young Indian that's like disrupting the U.S. government.
He's very interesting because Peter Thiel's fingerprints are all over that, and I think a lot of the soup that these guys come from is that kind of like young Silicon Valley defense contractor, reactionary, corner of society. Like all of these guys have Meta and Palantir in their LinkedIns in some capacity.
A bunch of his classmates were tweeting positively about him, though. One former classmate said, "Let me tell you something about Akash. During a project at Berkeley, I accidentally deleted our entire code base 2 days before deadline. I panicked. Akash just stared at the screen, shrugged, and rewrote everything from scratch in one night, better than before. We submitted it early and got first in class. Many such stories. I trust him with everything I own." Both Boba and Korstein are listed in internal government records as experts, and they report directly to Amanda Scales, OPM's new chief of staff. Moving on, we have Gavin Klieger. I might be mispronouncing all of these people's names, by the way. This is the 25-year-old who also attended UC Berkeley. Most recently, according to his LinkedIn, he worked for an AI company called Beta.
What the fuck are we doing here, man? I don't give a fuck who these assholes are. Get the fuck out. Go to jail. You fascist fucking assholes. All of you fascists need to get the fuck out of there. Now. Jail is lucky to go to jail. What the hell are these assholes doing with our information? America. What they're doing is unconstitutional and they should be executed.
Archangel, going in. They're taking C.
Donald Trump should be thrown out of office immediately for dereliction of duty, which the duty is to protect the Constitution.
Lock C. Hostile scout
Well,
in your AO.
all these fascists should fucking die.
Bricks. He was a software engineer at Twitter before Elon Musk took over. And of course, he has a Substack. I don't know, Ryan, if you had a chance to review it at all.
Yeah, there's like 2 posts and they look like they were both written by AI. His major outlet online seems to be Twitter, where he was a big fan of sharing posts from Nick Fuentes, the far-right influencer, among other nasty kind of Trumpian people. So if there's any question of like where these guys align politically, there shouldn't be.
Yeah, this guy seems sort of overtly to promote pretty far right-wing extremists. I mean, Nick Fuentes is almost as far as you can get. His posts also seem pretty conspiratorial. He wrote The Curious Case of Matt Gaetz, How the Deep State Destroys Its Enemies, as well as another one titled Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense, The Warrior Washington Fears. He, of course, has no previous government experience. And when all of this came out and his name was leaked by Wired, he published another Substack post for, I think it was a $10,000 annual paywall titled Why Doge? And somebody on Reddit, I guess, paid or got around the paywall, and it's just a blank post. So he's trolling people.
I mean, that's pretty funny. That's pretty good, actually. I support that.
Also, in addition to his boosting of Nick Fuentes Groyper content, Travis Brown, investigative journalist on BlueSky, posted that Gavin has also been responding to literal Nazis, like open white supremacist fascist Nazis. So his online footprint is kind of controversial. Next, we have Ethan Chautran, a 23-year-old He was recently profiled actually by Business Insider back in September, talking about how he was a senior at Harvard studying computer science and the founder of an OpenAI-backed startup called Energize AI. I think it's really funny that this kid already has one of these like BI Hustle articles. I don't know if you saw it, Ryan, but the headline is, "I'm a Harvard senior who balances college and my OpenAI-backed startup through these 3 productivity tips. One is time blocks, one is using an AI note taker, and the third is planned distractions," which I didn't really understand, but it's basically going to the gym in the evening.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, of course.
He's definitely in the like Musk Altman world. He was the runner-up at a hackathon held by xAI, Elon Musk's AI company. He received a $100,000 grant from OpenAI to build his scheduling assistant, Spark. And he's also written books, which I cannot tell if or where these were ever published, but they're available on Amazon. Stock Prediction with Deep Learning. It was his most recent book. And Stories from 2045, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Work. He also built, I would say he doesn't have any government experience, but he did work on building Ballot Proof, which is a ballot security system that takes input images of the front and back sides of your ballot and uses image analysis to determine which errors prevent your critical vote from being counted.
I can't wait to have to use that in a couple years to vote before they like disqualify all of our votes. That'll be very fun.
Next, we have Gautier Cole Killian. He is a 24-year-old. He's mostly known online as Cole Killian, and he has a working email associated with Doge, where he's also currently listed as a volunteer. According to his now deleted resume, he graduated high school in 2019 and attended McGill at least through 2021. His website indicates that he worked as an engineer at Jump Trading, which specializes in algorithmic and high-frequency financial trades. His former website lists his interests as utilitarianism, effective altruism, rationalism, closed individualism, absurdism, Pyrrhonian skepticism, meta-rationalism, empty individualism.
Yeah, no, those are my interests as well. That's what my Tinder account looks like, actually.
Can you explain effective altruism?
Yeah, very simply, it's the idea that you can use an equation to solve for the maximum human happiness. So you can apply engineering and mathematics and economic principles to create the most amount of happiness for the world possible. And a lot of effective altruists are like, yeah, we should just like invest in mosquito nets. But then a lot of them, like Sam Bankman-Fried, are like, no, we should make a stupid cryptocurrency and use that to give everybody money in the form of UBI. That's the major sort of tenet of the philosophy.
Moving on, we have Luke Ferreter. He is a 23-year-old Teal Fellow and former SpaceX intern. According to his LinkedIn, he dropped out of the University of Nebraska. While he was in school, he was part of this award-winning team that deciphered portions of an ancient Greek scroll and won them actually $700,000, which he received a part of. He also has a working GSA email address. They're all definitely 1 degree of separation away from each other.
Yeah.
The final one, which was revealed kind of after the initial 6, we have Marco Els, a 25-year-old engineer who previously worked for 2 of Musk's companies, and he graduated from Rutgers in 2021. He worked for SpaceX for a little, focused on satellite software, then moved on to working at X, where he's worked on Search AI, and he has now direct access to the Treasury Department systems responsible for nearly all payments made by the U.S. government. He has admin privileges over the code that controls Social Security payments, tax returns, and more. These systems have processed $4.7 trillion of payments in last year alone, and people are really worried that these admin privileges could allow him to bypass really crucial security measures and cause irreversible damage to these systems.
Yes, that is the major question with all of this, which is like, how much should we be freaking out about this? Because I've heard, yes, some of them have admin access, and they've hooked up an illegal server, which is a security risk. I've also read arguments saying that a lot of what they're doing is the equivalent of like deleting a spreadsheet column and assuming that the money there goes with it, which is not true. I think also Elon Musk wants us to freak out and assume that he's accomplishing things when we know that he's incapable of accomplishing anything.
And I want to kind of talk about this because once these kids' identities were revealed, there was so much backlash online and people were really quick to attack them. Obviously, Elon Musk was deleting anybody that posted about them. But I guess I'm wondering, like, how harmful is it? Because, I mean, is it not a good thing, just to play devil's advocate, to have a bunch of young, entrepreneurial, smart kids coming in and kind of disrupting the government? And I mean, yeah, they're in their early 20s, but Lena Khan was I think only 29 or 30 when she was appointed. And, you know, it's not to say that young people can't achieve great things in the government, right?
Ironically enough, in the beginning years of the Kennedy administration, there was like a push for like young American technocrats to come to DC and like modernize the government. I read this great piece years ago about how a lot of the blueprint for NASA started with the post office, where like in the 1800s, they were like building rockets to shoot mail across the country. Like there's always been moments where like the government is a place where like it excites young Americans and they want to go work there. That's not what this is. The problem with the way this is working is that like the personnel management system, OPM, that they've sort of worked their way into, and the General Services Administration that they've worked their way into, and the Treasury that they've worked their way into, manage trillions of dollars for, you know, hundreds of thousands of government employees and contractors. And if those systems get screwed up, I mean, that means the difference between like my retired parents like getting their Social Security payment. That's why Elon Musk is targeting these services. The question is like, is he going to do anything to them? We don't know yet.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this harm is potentially, you know, hypothetical, but then you have the situation with USAID, which one of these Zoomers actually sent an email to a bunch of USAID employees in DC saying, don't come to work on Monday. A lot of them have lost access to their email already. And I know he's said that he wants to shut it down. It's not clear if that's legal. So I guess, isn't he already sort of causing some harm?
The way he's found his way in here is by setting up a temporary organization, Doge, inside of essentially like the digital services department of the government. And he's attacking the digital services of the other departments that he doesn't like. So he's working with OPM via Amanda Scales, who is a former employee of his, and she's running OPM and sort of taking control of the different services and the personnel level. So that's where you're getting, you know, the requirements to take the pronouns out of your bio and the not buyouts that are being sent out to employees. And they're messing with the HR department in that way.
So he's messing with the digital sort of services of all of these government agencies and the HR services of these government agencies?
Right. Like he wasn't really involved with the CDC fiasco last week, but he wasn't not involved either. And like, let's say the CDC website went down. That doesn't mean the CDC is over.
But he's deleted tons of really essential information off the website, data sets that scientists rely on. Like, you know, people are unable to get grants because of this. So isn't that sort of harm in itself? You're right. He doesn't seem to have the unilateral power, right, to shut down these government agencies completely, but he still seems to be wreaking havoc.
He's absolutely wreaking havoc, and I'm not downplaying that, but I do think it's important, especially because we're in Trump world now. So like, he is not the only player here. He has rivals in the other factions that are taking over the government right now. Project 2025 and him are not aligned. He is working alongside Russ Vought, the co-author of Project 2025, but he is trying to make sure that Doge looks like it's doing things. He has no ability to tell USAID workers not to show up to their office. It would be like if the IT guy in your office was like, no one can come to work anymore. You can send that email and cause that chaos, but he can't actually make you not go to work.
But if that IT guy has disabled your employee badge and your email and has the support of the head of the company, it's kind of hard to say no.
Well, but our government also like has different branches, and I think this is what's been really frustrating me since all of this chaos started, which is that like we are not in a monarchy. Okay, like I was reading headlines today about like Donald Trump's gonna get rid of the Department of Education. So I was like, okay, is that even possible? And I spent like about an hour looking into it. No, an executive order cannot get rid of the Department of Education. You can just say no. like you can be like, no, USA does exist.
Well, isn't that more of a messaging problem then from Democrats? Because I think, first of all, I really think it's important not to downplay the level of chaos that this man has caused already in the government. Like, I get what you're saying. He can't unilaterally shut down the CDC, but the harm that he's caused is irreparable and will take years to untangle.
If we're talking about specifics to what he's done to USAID, yeah, he has disabled the security app that USAID workers use. Terrible. He has gunked up how the HR system works. I think it is just very important to be very specific that Elon Musk and his team of Gen Z sociopaths can only impact digital services. And they are turning that around to Trump supporters and trying to make them believe that they have deleted USAID.
But those digital services are also quite essential to operationally sort of functioning governments. And it is, but you're right, sure, they cannot just delete an entire government agency. So Ryan, can you talk about like what they have caused harm to? Because I think you've said, you know, it's important to make this distinction between what Elon Musk and his little crony, Gen Z cronies, have been able to do and what they're unable to do theoretically under the sort of current laws. Is there any effort to stop his influence or to sort of control the reach of Doge?
No. It started today. Maxwell Frost, a Democrat, is holding a rally, I think, as we're recording this. They're at the Treasury Department. Elizabeth Warren is getting out there and calling this a coup. And it is. And one of the biggest risks right now is time. The more that they can worm their way into these systems and the more that they can confuse people, even if what they're saying is totally illegal and they have no jurisdiction to do it, if employees in the government don't know or are just following it, then yeah, that's the problem. The major thing here, we saw this with the videos in South Korea during their coup. Like, you have a brief moment to hold the legality of this thing together, and if you don't, you're screwed. And so Democrats are finally beginning to move on this, but it's taken them about a week and a half.
I think you also wrote recently about the different sort of warring factions within the Trump world. Can you talk about the kind of three different groups at play here and how they're at odds with each other?
Yeah, so I pulled this from Ben Collins, former NBC News reporter, current CEO of The Onion. I have to say that whole thing, because citing him as The Onion CEO kind of like diminishes it a bit, I think, but I love you, Ben. And he was really smart to point this out, which is that Trump world is a reality show. Even as frightening and as quickly efficient as it's become, it is a reality show full of different factions and palace intrigue. And so right now we have effectively Stephen Miller looking over immigration. He's the one that is absolutely pushing for Guantanamo Bay to become a concentration camp and the ICE raids, and that's been his thing for like 10 years now. The second faction would be Russ Vought, the co-author of Project 2025. I would call these guys like the demagogues, the like true blood and soil white nationalists, and they have been planning the Project 2025 takeover for years. And they're very ideological, and they're across the gamut. Like, if these guys succeed, we're in Handmaid's Tale. And right now, these guys are focusing on the Office of Management and Budget, and they're trying to do that as step one to effectively render Congress useless. They want to sort of pull as much power away from the other branches, put it to Trump, and that way, when people start complaining that Elon Musk is breaking the law, there's no one that can do anything, right? And then faction 3 would be Elon Musk and Doge. And they, I think, are the honestly the one to worry about the least, because they have no political anything. Like, none of them have been endorsed, none of them have been nominated or voted for, and they're not even working within the government. They are effectively contractors working under a subgroup of a subgroup, and I'm much more frightened by the Project 2025 guys and Stephen Miller, because they are already succeeding.
I saw this headline today talking about how one of Musk's allies had told staff that the future of the government is AI first, and how they need to sort of operate the government like a software company. Is it this like monarchy-like network state? Are they trying to run the business like an AI startup? Like, what do they sort of hope to achieve?
Part of me thinks the AI thing is like his weird beef with Sam Altman, and he's just trying to like get one step ahead of OpenAI because he hates them. But I will say it does reflect an urge in Silicon Valley to create an AI-powered network state, and they believe that China already is this, and they believe that they're in an arms race to create a nation-level AI. I also think, quite selfishly, Elon Musk wants to power the whole government via X. He wants to replace the dollar with crypto and have the crypto run through X wallets, and he wants to have XAI working, on whatever. And that is, to me, what his role really is that he is trying to slash and destroy and dismantle as many government digital services as possible and then replace them with his own bad version.
It's kind of funny because I feel like a lot of the government used to run on Twitter, ironically, before Elon took it over. Like, all of the government agencies had accounts. That's kind of how you used to get a bunch of really crucial like government updates and stuff. And it was Elon Musk's takeover and the verification stuff that made a lot of them leave, right?
That's absolutely correct. Because he wanted to own it. He didn't want them to use it. He wants to own them. He wants control. And this is what he's been doing forever. Like, he wants to replace NASA with SpaceX, and he wants to replace public transportation with Tesla, and he wants to replace the government email listservs with X.
I just feel like he is so fundamentally annoying. I can't imagine this going on for 4 years. Like, do you see any world where like he ultimately just like, yeah, pisses off the wrong Project 2025 person, Trump gets tired of him stealing all the headlines? Like, how long do you think this reign of Musk is going to last, or do you think his like political power will be neutered in any way?
So far, the legal response to all of the Trump administration has been pretty good. Like, you have to sort of reflect on the fact that like America is like a pretty healthy legal institution, and even if our Supreme Court's mega conservative, like we have these branches, they work pretty well, and like we survived the first Trump administration, and right now like most of the major executive orders that Trump's passing are being blocked, and it makes me fairly optimistic about the longevity of Doge, because they are legit breaking the law. Like, they just are. So, and those laws still exist for now.
Where do you think these Zoomers that are working within Doge go? Do you think that they will ultimately be absorbed into the Trump government? Or most of them just working, getting another line item on their resume, and they'll just go back into like Silicon Valley world?
I think they
to
will
the
just
fucking
go back.
gallows.
Yeah, really, what we're sort of seeing in the last month or two is this culture in Silicon Valley that we did nothing to stop. We didn't break up these monopolies. We allowed them to create essentially like weird pseudo-religions that they all believe in, and effectively groom generations of young men to follow in their footsteps, and now they're all invading Washington. That's where these kids come from, and that's where these kids go back. And we can't do anything about that for at least 8 years, let's say. Like we have to like really overhaul the government and regulate those companies and like get back on track to like break that culture. But unfortunately, those ghouls are going to be with us for a long time.
What do you think Mark Zuckerberg and the other tech CEOs sort of feel about this? Like, do you see any of them trying to assert any influence over Doge or whatever? I mean, I feel like Musk has been able to so successfully worm his way into power in this administration in a way that the other CEOs have not.
I sort of see Mark Zuckerberg as like not an idiot. I have to imagine that most of the people of like his worlds are looking at Elon Musk as like a carnival barker, insane person. To me, it reeks of like being a sideshow, because I don't think any reasonable person even like at the highest level of Silicon Valley can like look at X and be like, that's good. Like, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg would want Facebook to run like X.
I don't think so. I think X is so bad and crazy that it gives him cover to do things like roll back fact checking or things like that he's probably wanted to do for a while and can now, or like sell verification, right? And things like that. I mean, there was that report, I think it was about the Musk sort of complaining internally about declining user numbers. And I don't think that X is a fundamentally healthy platform.
No, and in fact, like if I were someone like Zuckerberg watching this, I would just be waiting for it to implode and then go send a bunch of people to DC to sell government, to buy government contracts. I have to assume like the Jeff Bezoses, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world are waiting to scoop up the damage, like the wreckage, and buy it, or get like some cush contract out of it when Elon Musk embarrasses himself or gets thrown in jail or whatever.
Yeah, or maybe hire some of these 23-year-olds to go work at Meta.
If you want a kid vaping on your Zoom call, they'd be perfect for that.
I'm curious also what you think is going to happen to the tech landscape under Trump. Obviously, Musk is probably going to enrich himself, and we're all going to have to use X for a few more years. But the TikTok ban stuff is coming up. I mean, I feel like there was only that 90-day stay. Like, what do you think is the future of TikTok as a platform under Trump?
I think it stays, and it has very American tweaks.
How do you think it'll stay? Do you think he'll like force part of it to sell?
Yeah, I think so. And I think TikTok will do it. TikTok already is like extremely aggressive about like tracking your country. I could see them easily carving off like an American TikTok. And to answer your question more broadly, I just think like tech in America, which is already quite bad compared to the rest of the world, is going to get really stagnant. The apps that people are using in, Asia or Europe or South America are light years ahead of what we use, what we see, and I think it's only just going to get more pronounced under Trump.
What do you think people should keep in mind when they see these endless headlines about Elon Musk or these 19-year-olds, taking power from the government and Trump doing XYZ executive order?
I think there are a lot of people who are not seeing these headlines. But if you're seeing a headline that says like Donald Trump is getting rid of the Department of Education, you should just take a second and be like, okay, is that possible? The only way forward here is to not get sucked into the craziness. Is to remind yourself that like we still have laws. We can still kick these people out. We can still arrest them. I have been in countries that have gone through a dictatorship, through coups, and the malaise is the killer. You're talking about an event horizon you reach where you feel like nothing can be changed, and that doesn't go away when you get out of the dictatorship 20 or 30 years later. You just have to keep your head on straight, because like it is hard, man. It is really hard.
I am an eternal optimist, so I'm delusional about everything. So I'm like, it's probably going to be fine.
Right.
But
I am too, to a degree, actually.
I think I also don't like the reflexive panic that you see from a lot of like liberal influencers. And I don't think that we're going to get the same level of like resistance grifter type people that we had during the first Trump presidency. I think
we're starting to see a few blossom right now, actually. If you go on BSky.app and check it out.
That would be a shame if that ecosystem reemerged, because there was so much misinformation and there was so much sort of like panic towards the wrong things. I mean, back then it was all like this focus on Russia and like Russia put Trump in power and like, and I hope that this time around people can sort of, get better news sources and not like immediately spiral, while also taking it seriously. We should take it seriously that what these people are doing. But as you said, we do still have somewhat of a functioning government left.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. We can still drink the tap water, like in most parts of America.
Not everywhere.
Not everywhere, but most of them, the things that like really worry me are the Supreme Court level stuff and the genuinely nominated politicians that are being put into power. Like even in a coup, there are still laws for a little bit, and so we've got to say like, okay, what is possible, what's not, and hopefully the media gets a little better at communicating that as well. I feel like that would be nice.
I also hope some of these Zoomers are good actors. I don't know. They seem sort of to authentically want to help, and so I hope that they do, they don't cause too much harm.
Hey, if you're a young person who wants to get involved in government, go barricade yourself to the door of the USAID office and help people break through and get in there. Then you'll get a job in the office when we fix the government.
All right, Ryan. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's it for the show. You can watch full episodes of Power User on my YouTube channel at Taylor Lorenz. That's at Taylor Lorenz on YouTube. And please subscribe to my tech and online culture newsletter, usermag.co. That's usermag.co. If you like the show, give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. See you then.